Welcome to Taking Inventory. I'm Daniel Druger with my co-host James Barrow, and today we welcome a special guest, Eric Franchi, who is a general partner at AperiamVentures. AperiamVentures is an early-stage venture capital firm focused on transformative ad tech and martech companies. They've invested in companies like tvScientific, Iris TV, ID5, Rembrand, and Kevel, which should sound familiar since James interviewed their CEO last week on the podcast. Aperiam is also a proud investor in Market, and prior to founding AperiamVentures, Eric founded Undertone, which was a leading digital ad network and tech company. He built that business to over $100 million in revenue before it was acquired by Perion Network. Eric is also the co-host of the Marketecture podcast, which anybody listening to this now should go check out after this episode. So Eric, welcome to the podcast. Super excited to have you here.
Thank you. Daniel, you are an intro extraordinaire.
I appreciate that. That's why James keeps me here.
And I have no idea.
For any listeners, we were inspired to do this podcast because of Eric and because of the podcast that he's done at Marketecture. So thank you for pushing us to do it. It's been a great experience. And as you can hear from Eric's background, Eric's kind of like the godfather at this point of ad tech, has done a whole bunch of stuff that is pretty amazing to see. So I guess maybe that's a good place to start. Like, how did you get into ad tech, in the first place? And yeah, I don't know, just we'd love to kind of hear more about sort of that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I got into ad tech, I think, before the term ad tech was even a thing or it was even invented. My first job out of school was at a company called About.com, which is now known as Dotdash. And this was like in 2000, right? Like literally at the peak of the original internet 1.0 bubble. So, was there through like the high times, was there through the subsequent bust, and left About to start a business, which at the time in 2001 was actually quite controversial. Now everybody's an entrepreneur. Back then, not only was the economy sort of scary, entrepreneurship wasn't even necessarily an attractive career path. To, start, our version of a digital agency back when digital expertise was actually quite rare. So we started a business. We took a couple of About advertisers with us and just helped them spend their money more effectively during a time of like great transition of the internet. We became a big customer of a lot of the ad networks of the day. So these are names that may be familiar to some. So one was called Advertisement Banners, which was the forerunner to specific media, which ultimately became Viant. And, still friend with the Vanderhooks today. Another was called Fast Click, which was acquired by a company called ValueClick, became Conversant, became part of Epsilon and Publicis. So, we quickly sort of started realizing this business of ad networks is like way more attractive than an agency model because you have the ability to have better margin, scale, and hire salespeople, so on and so forth. So we started Undertone basically as an experiment to see if we can build an ad network. The original idea for Undertone, some people know this, most don't, was focused on like one ad format. It was a pop under, and thus the name Undertone was sort of like birthed not with great guidance. A pop under was this browser window that would literally pop behind the browser that you were looking at, reading your news or something like that. This was before tab browsing. You would, kill the browser and look to open up another window. But for a split second, there was this 720 by 300 ad unit that was sitting there, was the only thing on your screen. Actually ahead of its time is like this cool, engaging, high attention ad format. Basically, we pioneered the use of those, built a business on top of it. And then Undertone just took off from there. And subsequently we grew and pivoted and had a lot of ups and downs as a result. But that was the whole founding story of Undertone. It was like agency turned network, figured it out as we went along, bootstrapped it fully. Back then, 2001, nobody was investing in anything internet advertising related. Did some private equity along the way. And then to your point, we sold it to Perion 15 years later.
Crazy. And was starting that business during that period? Like for, I graduated college in 2007. I think Danny did the same year as me. And like, we had the Great Recession, but frankly, this whole period right now, like COVID, all of it feels worse than that. Maybe it was a function of age for us, but was like for the listeners that weren't kind of in the workplace at 2001, like how crazy was it when you said you were going to start this business? Where people are like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, yeah. When we left, the then president of About, who has become a friend and is an LP in the fund, he tried to talk us out of it. He was like, this thing, meaning like the industry, the economy, this is bad. It's going to get worse. Not only I think it's a bad idea to start a business. I don't think you're going to be able to get another job until like this whole thing starts to correct itself. So yeah, I mean, let alone what my parents thought. It was pretty crazy because again, like I said, like entrepreneurship wasn't a viable career path to most. A lot of people thought the internet itself was a fad.
Yeah.
People thought we were going to go back to like sending mail and getting like agreements via fax machine. It was a really weird time. But if you believed, you were able to, I think have a real shot at building something sustainable.
And so I think, when you started it and then kind of as the company grew, I guess what gave you that confidence up front to say, yes, it's a bad time. Everyone's trying to talk me out of it. My parents aren't excited about this, but this is the right company to start building. And then along the way, were there moments or milestones that reestablished that confidence in the company as it continued to grow that you said, yes, this is the next phase of the company. And I'm even more excited than day one.
Yeah, we were salespeople. So myself and my co-founder, I should have mentioned earlier, but Michael Cassidy, we were both salespeople. So everything to us was, is there a revenue opportunity here? Yeah. We weren't building product. We weren't building technology. Like our first business was just helping brands like Classmates and Match and Orbitz and Netflix, like literally helped to spend their dollars that they were already going to spend more effectively. We were a cheaper, more effective solution. So if we were able to, convince a brand like, hey, give us a shot, give us some budget, let us show you that we can do this stuff and drive performance effectively. Pretty simple pitch. And with enough of those, we had the confidence to go out on our own and start a business. So I think for us being so like revenue oriented, so like actually focused on like, is there an actual commercial opportunity here? That was some of the DNA that Undertone was infused with that I think allowed us to navigate during some pretty challenging times. And I think the second time that answer your other question, like, where we sort of like had really high conviction was when we decided to pivot the business to an ad network. And again, it came from having conversations with customers who we were already sort of like testing this new ad format out with. And it was already driving performance and basically saying like, hey, if we just like started getting more of these for you, would you buy more of them? And they were like, yeah, sure. That sounds great. So that gave us not only the confidence, but the budget to go out and start building out a publisher network and then going from there. I remember distinctly, like the moment I knew that this thing had some legs, ironically, it was the Friday and we were in a tiny office, 26 and 6 back before it was a cool part of town. And it was me and one other person and a fax machine in the office. And this fax machine was just like ringing nonstop. It actually made it difficult to have phone calls because it was like so obnoxious and the buzzing and everything like that. But it was ringing because people were sending us insertion orders. It was like the end of the month, the beginning of the month turn. And it was like, oh my God, we got something here. So I mean, I can't even tell you, this is like 2002. I can remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's kind of funny, like given that you went from starting an ad tech business kind of in one of the most difficult times, and then after you sold that business, which is like impossible to do for most people, you went on to start this venture fund focused on ad tech and martech, which is a segment that most people up until a few years ago were extremely negative on. And so we'd love to kind of hear about like how the fund came to be. And then I guess also just like how you had the conviction to go ahead and start an ad tech fund. I will say now looking at your portfolio and talking to people, like everyone, I think people are it's very clear they missed the boat by not looking at some of these things, and people weren't thinking about what ad tech was in the right way. And you guys, I don't know if anyone else that sort of had that high conviction at that point. So yeah, I'd love to hear kind of how that started and what was the process for getting that up and going.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I think there's two answers. Number one, ad tech has historically been a very misunderstood category for investment. Meaning most people think it's a bad category to invest in. However, if you have a bit of an operator's view on the market, you understand where this thing is going, and you have conviction that brands are going to be more data driven, not less data driven, more digitally focused, not less digitally focused, right? More focused on sort of like, the eventual every dollar becoming digital that can become digital, becoming digital. There's actually an enormous opportunity there. But people made bad investments in the original ad tech 1.0 era. Again, if you were to write investments, you could have built an incredible portfolio. And part of the reason why I did this as my next act was I started spending some time with Joe Zawadzki, who is my partner at AperiamVentures. He was an investor in like every generational, like early ad tech company, Moat, IAS, AppNexus, Beeswax, Accordant Media, like this whole slew of like awesome 10 figure exits. And I originally said like, hey, we just sold the business. I want to start investing a little bit. Yeah, I can just kind of piggyback off what you're doing, your deal flow. And in classic Joe fashion, he was like, actually, why don't we just start a fund? Why don't we start a business? And that's what, frankly, ended up becoming, the V1 of what we were doing. So the answer is like, the reality is it's a great category to invest in. The reality is it's becoming a larger opportunity every year. And if you know what you're doing, to your point, like some of the companies we've had, the benefit of investing in, you can drive awesome returns.
Yeah. Following up on that, like, what is it about kind of ad tech and MarTech? Do you think that the broader market gets wrong? Why they're viewing it so negatively, and why that's been such an opportunity for you guys to step in and get those returns because you have a different point of view and understand it from a different perspective?
Like I said, there were a lot of investors that chased what ultimately were not great business models and didn't have strong differentiation. So at some point, probably around the time you guys were graduating college, this was in the ad network boom. The original LumaScape had like 400 ad networks on it. So, there was like this gold rush to, building a business that was like completely undifferentiated, completely difficult to like build something sustainable in. So again, it's a little bit of like, the space that you need to have, like, I think a real understanding in order to figure out where the puck is going and ultimately what the right sustainable business models are going forward. Like, I get pitches. You put out a shingle, you're an investor on LinkedIn or something like that. You get pitch. I'm sure you guys do. You get pitches for everything. And I don't know the first thing about medical equipment. I don't know the first thing about like solar. I'm sure there are enormous markets that you can like crush it in, but like, what do I know? Versus like, for better or for worse, what have Joe and I been focused on for the past 25 years, which is this market where we stay focused.
Well, testament to that too is like, I get people reaching out to me. I had one this morning that I'm going to introduce you to, but I get people being like, can you introduce me to the Aperiam guys? Like the smartest people I know are like working on ad tech, which I think a few years ago, they would have been working on crypto probably. But now they know that this is like, they can see the retail media, they can see connected TV. It's like very obvious that there's like a whole rewiring that's happening here.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's cool to see the smartest people do it. And then I think you guys are starting to become a brand there where they're like, I don't want some random investor who a year ago was focused on Web3. I want someone who actually understands this stuff to be there. And, and you guys are one of our investors, and we've seen already, like, just like the intros you made and just like the context you guys bring. It's cool that the market finally has it. Cause I feel like, for all I've done a few of these startups now, and like, we didn't have this, especially the first go around, like, outside of like Kim Perrell and the Clark Landrys as angels, there's like no fund that really did it. So it's really cool to see it.
Thank you for saying that, but there needs to be more. And that's why, we're doing more to frankly evangelize, not just the portfolio, but evangelize the category via the podcast and everything like that, because I think this is the third generational opportunity that we have right now in terms of like building the next generation of like amazing ad tech, MarTech businesses. And we need more participation from all types of funds, all types of generalists. So we're working hard to make sure it's not just us. That said, thank you for recognizing that we're focused and we're doing okay.
Well, because of that, and because you guys are getting such deal flow, because people recognize the Perion brand, you have had some amazing investments, since the inception of the fund. Can you talk about some of them or maybe some of the spaces that you're excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. So being on our website, AperiamVC, it's not a full list of companies. It's a little bit more sort of like sampling on a couple of sectors that we've got a key thesis in. We invest a lot. So we'll invest on average a company per month. That's by design because historically in these times of like, the next great subcategories emerging, oftentimes it's very hard to figure out who the winners are going to be. There's a lot of interesting companies popping up, all sort of like focused on a real area of opportunity, sort of like thing one. And thing two, somewhat unique to ad tech and more tech, there's multiple winners in given categories. So it's all by design, but to answer your question, we've got 60-ish active investments within the portfolio. Couple of examples. You guys had James from Kevel on last week. That's one of our highest conviction, most exciting companies in the portfolio. They are, building the picks and shovels for not just this retail media wave, but, anyone who wants to build an advertising business. I recommend everybody listen to that episode. I think he's actually said some interesting, somewhat contrarian things in terms of what the future might look like. tvScientific, another LA-based company, they are building a buying and attribution platform for CTV focused on performance marketers. So thesis that many have is like all of this, the broadcast dollars are going to become CTV dollars, are going to go into streaming, which I think is correct. The other thesis that you have that sort of like what was the idea behind tvScientific is, oh, by the way, if CTV is inherently digital and it's inherently a better format, what if you made it work and could you unlock performance dollars? So it's not just the $70 billion of TV dollars, it's like $200 billion of Facebook and Google performance marketers. Like that's the type of stuff that gets us really excited. So tvScientific is another one. More recently, we backed you guys. We backed Rembrand, which is generative AI for the product placement of videos. So we're so excited and super thankful that we've built a brand that brings a lot of deal flow our way. Categories that we're excited about right now, certainly everything around retail media and commerce, certainly everything around CTV. I think that beginnings are here in terms of, just the data privacy and the regulation and the impact and, that'll have on creating opportunities for new business. And I'm super deep on the AI stuff. I think, again, we're at the beginning of, a platform shift that's going to change everything.
Yeah, we totally agree. We were talking about this prior to the podcast, but like with AI stuff, even I was initially, it just felt like it was overblown. And then you start playing with it and you're like, man, this is just going to be integrated and kind of rewire everything we do. And ads and marketing seem like such an obvious place.
The first place.
And have you found that like, is that kind of like a pattern? I mean, given you've been doing this so long, like, we probably have, you and Joe probably have more digital advertising experience than like almost any other team out there, just by nature of like, this stuff didn't come out until you guys were doing it. Do you find that like it is the first place usually? Like, is it to you guys, it's like very clear AI goes to ads first, the same way that this happened, with, I guess, mobile and like all the other things? Like, is that the pattern?
Yeah, I think the pattern is there. And gosh, Antonio Garcia Martinez, GM, popular on Twitter, has a cool ad. He has ironically a cool Web3 ad tech company called Spindle.
Yeah, Spindle. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah. He said something on Twitter that I thought was dead on, which was like, everybody's talking about all these potential, applications of generative AI. The first application of generative AI will be ad creative. It's just like so obvious in terms of, the ability to create something, have it splintered into a million different variants, update it on the fly. Like what do you need? You need like, the ability to sort of like customize inherently standardized creative and then apply it to all sorts of data sets. So like, it's inevitable that this is, one of the first markets that I think we see like real opportunity in. So that's been a thesis of ours for some time, applied AI, but the generative stuff is more recent. I think Rembrand is a great example of that. And there's others as well, Memorable.io and a few others.
For that space, you have the incumbents, the Googles and Facebooks that have been working and are very vocal about generative AI and what they're doing in AI for their ads businesses. And so how do you kind of look at the incumbents and what they're doing in that space versus the Rembrands and other companies that are doing it. And then there's a slew of other startups that maybe are doing it for the SMBs that aren't venture backable per se, but, are going to carve out a nice niche for themselves. How do you view kind of that landscape altogether?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you've been doing this for long enough, you've seen great businesses built in the shadow, so to speak, of Google, Facebook, Amazon, Snap during their whole ascension, right? Like they're not the entire internet. They're not the entire world. And increasingly, I think, there is the desire for, more product and tech leading brands of all types to start, having their own proprietary solutions or their own partners. So, obviously applying AI to, Google and Facebook, via PMax, via Facebook's product, it's a no brainer. But ultimately they're just a subset of digital advertising. And then ultimately, I think you're going to see more brands start to, pull back from giving all that stuff away in favor of kind of rolling their own.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because we obviously I feel like we're like such walled garden guys. And our first business shift was all about primarily Facebook. And then obviously we were at Snap and we built our own walled garden. And we've since leaving and starting Market, we've had to actually kind of take a little bit of almost stop buying our own bullshit and be like, the internet's huge. Like the walled gardens are massive, but there's a lot of other internet out there that can provide value. And, I think when you're inside the walls of a walled garden, you kind of think that this is the entire internet. And I think the more and more we dive into it, to your point, just huge businesses can be built behind the scenes. And when you look at something like the Trade Desk in particular, it has I think the market cap is aggregate. I think it's bigger than Snapchat and Pinterest combined now or something crazy like that. That it does show you that there's a lot out there. So yeah, it's one of those things where again, though, I think a lot of our Daniel and my network, and some guys are kind of blind to it. And it's helpful for us to stop and think about just how can we provide value given that that's the actual world we live in.
Yeah. Yeah. But even so, right. Go back to the podcast with James. James from Kevel, he believes in walled gardens. He just thinks there needs to be more of it. Right. Yeah. Why should Google, Facebook, Snap, Amazon have all the fun? Right. So investing in businesses that might help build more walled gardens. I think that's an interesting idea. But then also number two, let's say you are investing primarily across all these walled gardens. You need technology, you need infrastructure for everything that helps make that stuff go, both in terms of the front end and measurement and analytics, so on and so forth. We have just invested in an attribution company that just sits across and measures activity across walled gardens. So regardless of where this stuff goes, there's just tons of opportunity. We're excited about it.
So Daniel, I think we're at the point now where we get into your world famous rapid fire. You wanna drive that, bud?
Let's do it. And I think given the conversation thus far, I think this first one is fitting. So Eric, we're just going to go through a number of questions. You can just fire off those answers. So we'll start off open web or walled garden?
Both.
Can you, let's unpack that a little bit.
I mean, Aperium is Latin for open, right? We believe in a free and open internet, obviously. That said, like I said before, there needs to be tools and picks and shovels to help build across the entire value chain, the entire, continuum. And furthermore, I think this idea of walled garden versus open web, it's a little bit of small thinking, right? If you think about where you guys are going with retail media and commerce, if you think about CTV, if you think about the applications of AI, these are much bigger than this whole walled garden versus no open web debate. I think that's a little bit of 2010 to 2020 era thinking.
Okay. Next question. Investor or operator?
Operator. While I am an investor by trade, we built the fund, we built the firm in a different way. I think with an operator's mindset, both in terms of just using our operator chops to help inform investment decisions and help our portfolio, but B, we're building a firm that we'd want to work with as founders. So, we operate in an early stage fund, but increasingly we've been doing more later stage. We are building infrastructure to incubate businesses. So, at some point, Like, well, I mean, my passion is always the early stage stuff. I'm always going to be sort of naturally oriented to that. But this is going to be a full life cycle firm, and you can only do that through taking an operator's view on how to build a business for decades.
Yeah. Speaking from two operators, we agree. What's the best idea that you don't want to start, but you'd love to see someone else start? Doesn't have to be ad tech.
Oh, wow. I mean, you guys heard the story when you came to Joe and me saying, hey, we're thinking about this idea for market. We'd love to bounce it off you. Joe and I had a whiteboard session only a week or two prior that there needs to be more tools because of this proliferation of retail media networks. And how do you help brands make sense of it and operate across it? And what have you built on some interesting tools that are being developed? You guys you guys are on to building the business that we had been discussing. So, I think most of my other ideas are not well formed enough. The idea of our investment in market, like, I think is one of my favorite stories.
Well, we appreciate that and take it seriously. We will make sure that we represent this idea as well as possible. We're on a good start.
Yeah. Okay. If you weren't doing Aperiam or you weren't in ad tech, what do you think you'd be doing?
Wow. I've been in ad tech for so long that, it's bit of a sort of box here. I think the AI stuff is so exciting. So I think, just increasingly, like, trying to think about other businesses that, have sort of like obvious needs for automation and the use of AI. Like, I think about that stuff quite a bit. So I think I'd be doing something in AI, something in tech, maybe not just, optimized towards advertising and marketing.
Okay. We'll lighten these next two up. Twitter or Threads?
Please. Threads is cool. I hopped on it just like everybody when it first came out. I think there's going to be a place for it. I'm sure that they're going to reach a billion users and build a multi-billion-dollar advertising business because of it. But I think taking on Twitter for its cultural relevancy, for all the things that make it, for better, for worse, what it is, I don't think there can be a replacement.
It's funny, on the Twitter set, the next podcast we're doing is actually with James from Kevel. It's me, Daniel, and James, where we're going to talk about how we would fix Twitter's ads business. So we will send that to you when we do that.
That's so funny. It's just like longtime listeners of the Marketecture podcast, like, inevitably we talk about Twitter in most episodes. And, one of the things that, is somewhat maddening to R and me is the ad product. I mean, I think it's sort of like an opportunity, but B, like a missed opportunity, and has been for some time, just with, having the level of attention and engagement that it gets. And what the ad experience has been and continues to be is like, there's a massive delta there. So that's awesome. I'll be the first one.
So that's the digital combat. And so this one, we saw that you're into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, BJJ. Yeah. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So we know you'd pick Twitter over Threads, but what about an Elon versus Mark Zuckerberg, this battle of the CEOs?
Is this a serious question?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have way more expertise on this than most people on Twitter. Which one would you bet on?
It's just, in my mind, a matter of how fast he's able to submit Musk. There is absolutely no chance. And I love Elon. I drive a Tesla. I love Twitter. I love everything that he's doing. The thought of it actually concerns me because he's, like him or not, he's trying to do so much for the planet and humanity. I don't want him training and taking shots to the head and CTE and let alone actually getting in a physical altercation. So I can envision just, having watched some of his videos. And by the way, he is legit. Zuck is legit. Don't let anybody say otherwise. I can imagine him climbing on Elon's back, choking him out in a matter of seconds. Like there would be no fight. Mark Andreessen just had this blog post. Did you read that? About how not only should they fight, it's great. And this is, getting back to our roots of civilization. Maybe you should put it in the show notes because I read that and I was like, oh my God, he's never gotten to a fight, clearly, and never fought against a trained opponent.
I think we can get a video AI tool to just to build out this episode. Nobody actually has to physically fight. Let's just simulate this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg. He is legit. He rolls with and trains with UFC fighters. He's, won tournaments. Like, you see him move and you have, sort of like some knowledge of how these things go. He is a legit fighter.
You heard it here first then. Eric, thank you. Thank you for this. This was a lot of fun. Going from 2001 ad tech to ending with an Elon versus Zach battle. We took it
Quite
everywhere.
appropriate. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. It's been super fun to watch you build what we're, so excited about and see a real opportunity, and it's fun hopping on and chatting about it. Let's do it again sometime.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you doing this. And then just for anyone that wants to follow you on Twitter, Threads, LinkedIn, how can they find you?
I'm easy to find. It's Eric Franchi everywhere.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, thank you again.
Thanks,
Thank
Eric.
you, guys.